Hey, boo boos. Hey, boo boo. How you doing? Yeah, good boy. Yeah. Anyway, so I was taking a shower and I forgot about me doing this video to tell you about this story. I know a lot of people are thinking like, this hard time with this whole COVID stuff and being Christmas and everybody and all this kind of stuff and it being a perilous time. Like this headline says. And I get that. I can understand that. I mean, for a lot of people, this is kind of the first time that they kind of had any kind of hardship or struggle or, you know, anything that's kind of hindered them or their in their way or progress of life. And so it's kind of frustrating, irritating, and the whole uncertainty kind of thing is kind of makes people frustrated, right? It gets them confused. It gets them um, angry, right? Because they're in fear of it being uncertain, right? Rather than the fear of certainty of them going to their 9 to 5 and eating, eating their dinner all the time, going to work, doing it all over again, right? The same mundane routine over and over and over again. And now that it's not the same thing, now they don't know what to really do with themselves. Rather than and now that everybody's out there, either they're getting high, they're trying to have sex, or you know they're out there, doing violence or encouraging violence or just not doing anything at all. And well, there is a lot of people out there that are working hard and trying to keep peace and trying to provide and trying to get America to open up, which it should be right now. You know, uh, you know, there are a lot of people that are still trying to do the right thing. Whatever the right thing is. But I think that. Um, this is a great time, for us to really understand that the small things in life are really what matters. Family, community, um, work, right? Um, and also, just the family, humanity bond, humanal bond, right? Which is like a garden, right? Or a forest, or fungus, or all that kind of stuff, right? It's all connected, and so are we with the stream of consciousness, and that's what I kind of believe in. Either we are going to feed a stream of consciousness of chaotic um, strife, or we're going to do one that's going to be, you know, one that's going to be a flourishing life of prosperity for everybody, and I think that's possible, you know. And, I mean, I am in the minority of that possible, but I am left-handed, which is a minority in life too, and I am kind of a but they say double jointed, like your thumbs do this kind of stuff. Maybe I'm not a human being, who knows? But anybody that is going through some hard times or anything, I do relate, I do understand, and I do hope that you understand, you make it through this. That life is ups and downs. It's a teeter totter. It's a cycle. And I do hope that you stay strong and know that you are loved. People do care, whether they show it or not. It is true, you know. And when you make it out of this struggle and everything else, I just hope that you learn something, and that is something that is to be gained out of no matter what in life. Whether people always want materialistic things or monetary things or stuff like that, right? Things of sort of value that society puts on, but I don't understand that. I think that lessons learned and building character, grit, and stuff like that is more important and stuff like that, which is what my grandma taught me growing up. Anyways, enough about that. Let's move on to this little story here, and then this is. I mean, I think a lot of people do have seen also the picture or the portrait painting of George Washington, right, crossing the Delaware with the man, everything, right? Everybody's seen it, right? Well, I don't think that people understand or people really know that crossing the Delaware in that icy river like that was on Christmas. It was a Christmas thing. So this is like a Die Hard movie kind of thing. So it's relevant, but maybe not. Who knows? You know? You decide. That's not for me, remember? Alright. So the headline is, this is from a place called The Conversation, the website. Academic rigor, journalistic flair is their motto. We'll find out. Washington's perilous Christmas night crossing of the Delaware. Health hazards worse than war. For most people today, Christmas is a time of food, family, and festivities, when attention turns from work to woes to fellowship and celebration. Yet it has not always been so. In fact, Christmas of 1776 marked one of the most harrowing days in American history, when the fate of the fledgling republic itself hung in the balance. Often remembered as Washington's crossing of the Delaware, it pitted the ragtag Continental Army against perhaps the most feared force on earth, the German Hessians, whose service had been paid for by the Briton. Yet the outcome would ultimately hinge as much on cold ice and disease as on fighting prowess. America's waning prospects. Washington forces needed some good news after they ran the British out of Boston in March of 1776. Things began going from bad to worse. The British chased Washington out of New York, then across New Jersey. By year's end, Washington's army was shrinking and morale was low. The British troops was ensconced in New York, well fed and warm. They left German troops in charge of Trenton, New Jersey. Washington was expecting the forces of Generals Horatio Gates and Charles Lee to join him, but they were delayed by winter's weather and lack of confidence. The tide begins to turn. The first hint of reprieve arrived in the form of Thomas Paine's The American Crisis. One of my favorite founding fathers, by the way, is Thomas Paine. Published on December 19th with its famous lines, "These are the times that try men's souls. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. But the harder the conflict, the greater the triumph." Washington ordered it read to the men. Finally, the troops of Gates and Lee arrived, followed by the militiamen of Philadelphia, providing Washington with a total force of about 6,000, many whose enlistments would expire at year's end. On Christmas Eve, provisions arrived, further enhancing morale. Crossing the Delaware. Dun, 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 dun. Washington's plan was to make multiple crossings of the Delaware River in boats. On Christmas morning, he ordered the troops 3 days' food ration, fresh arms. The crossings would begin as soon as darkness fell. However, the weather deteriorated over the course of the evening, as drizzle changed into freezing rain and snow. Henry Knox, Washington's chief of artillery, had organized the crossing, which would be imperiled by the floating ice. Men who got wet faced grave risk of frostbite and freezing to death. Because of the ice and bad weather, the crossing, which was waited to be complete at midnight, was not finished until early the next morning. The Battle of Trenton. The commander of the German troops in Trenton had received warning that an attack was coming, but he dismissed it, in part because lone farmers had been harrying the Germans for days, alternatively drawing them out with gunshot and then retreating like betas. Against all odds, the December 26th surprise attack succeeded, throwing the Germans into confusion. When they tried to organize a counterattack, the Americans fired on them with muskets, killing their commander and sowing further discord. As a result of the battle, the Americans captured about 900 Germans and a large cache of supplies. Against orders, many American troops began enjoying captured rum with the result that some fell into the water as they returned across the river. Where'd the rum go? No more rum, red rum, red rum. Further crossings. While the attack and another foray a few days later did little to imperil the British forces in New York, they did restore the morale of the British troops, many whose terms of service were ending elected, thanks in part to a congressional bounty to remain. After a third successful crossing, see, it wasn't just one time, it took a couple times. Sometimes it takes more than once. After a third successful crossing, Washington and his men made their way to Princeton, where another successful attack forced the enemy back into New Brunswick. Thereafter, the Continental Army established its winter encampment in Morristown in early January. The real killers. Yet, the seasonal sensation of hostilities did not bring an end to suffering and death. Throughout the Revolutionary War, far more troops died of disease than in battle. Common scourges included smallpox, typhus, dysentery, and malaria. Of course, enemy troops were subject to the same diseases. Factors such as poor sanitation, right, which is like what they have in LA, and which I just showed you in some videos, which I got by my house, right, some poor shit, because, right, which is important, local, state, federal, they have to clean, right, cleanliness, godliness, we all know it's important, and crowded living conditions, right, you can't be like, packed like sardines, can't be doing that, created a favorable environment for the transmissions of infectious disease, while poor hygiene and malnutrition lowered host resistance to infections. But you gotta eat right, folks. You guys gotta know. Nutrition is everything. Get on a Mediterranean diet, alright? If you're fat, it's alright. Just go out there and exercise a lot more. Stop eating that much. You know what I mean? Drink a lot more water. Stop eating sugar. It's all good, folks. Come on. This is therapeutic stuff. We all know this. Environment of the transmission of infectious disease, while poor hygiene. I read that word. In their respective war, reprised a perennial theme of history. Disease took more lives than combat. In his seminal book, Plagues and Peoples, historian William McNeill demonstrates the divisive historical role of diseases such as smallpox in Mexico, bubonic plague in China, and typhoid fever in Europe. Disease also developed the American troops in the following winter at Valley Forge. Again, multiplied by poor living conditions, the winters of 1709 and 1780 in Morristown were still worse. Due to supply shortages and yet harsher weather, several regiments even mutinied. A fate Washington had previously managed to avoid. Gotta drink some more baby blood. It's good for bats, you know. Victory and perseverance. Against great odds, Washington managed to keep the army together, and eventually the Americans triumphed, as much throughout dodging divisive defeats and refusing to surrender as throughout any military prowess. As such chapters in the War of Independence illustrate America as known many bleak Christmases, and when it comes to negotiating difficult times, the stubborn spirit of its people has often proved its redemption. Right? That's the story of that time, right? And I mean, that just goes to show you that, I mean, if history doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes. And like again, that's why we should know. We should be able to look back, go, hey, okay, well, how was they living? Oh, okay, they didn't have indoor plumbing. We do. Oh, okay, we have Clorox wipes. We should be able to wipe stuff down. We should be able to washing our hands, wearing a mask, social distancing. Be able to do these things, common sense stuff. That's common sense. We know this stuff. Wash your hands all the time before you eat, before you do all kinds of stuff. We know this stuff. We know. We just weren't doing it because we were lazy, fat sons of bitches, and that's what we get. This is why we get. And I mean, we get the stuff we deserve, folks. So I mean, this is all the kind of stuff we get. If we have a bleak Christmas, if we're having disease, if we're having war, if we're having famine, if we're having whatever, if we're having stress, if we're having a bad time, if we're having a bad day, if our girlfriend broke up with us, if our dog died, whatever, then good. Because only out of that will we become stronger, all right, and fly away. Only through that, alright? So get it through your heads, alright? Okay? Stop pouting, alright? And start building up, right? Do some push-ups, read a book, you know what I mean? Go out and walk, maybe talk to a stranger, talk to your mother, talk to your father, talk to your brother, talk to whatever, you know? Pet your dog, play with your dog, actually talk to your, raise your kids, stuff like that. Actually do some shit, you know what I mean? Alright? Love you guys, alright?